Well, hello, and welcome to another edition of Better Minneapolis. I'm here with Becka Thompson, who ran for City Council in Ward 12. Hello.
Yes, hello. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So we thought it'd be good to do a little recap of some of the things that happened in the election. And as a former park board person,
Yes.
I'd like to ask you what you think about a couple of things, in particular, what's going to happen with the park board, or what did happen. There were some surprises.
The park board. That's a challenging one for me, and that's actually what weighs on me, to be honest. In the other side of the election, I personally tried to make sure that the park board would stay steady. I don't know how else to say that. I think that our board that I was a part of, that's finishing out its term, has been pretty steady for the city.
Well, it didn't seem like there's a ton of complaints.
Yeah, we didn't have drama, and the 363 La Una strike I could talk about, but I honestly don't. That wasn't really the drama that it was made out to be, not in terms of like our larger board. Mm-hmm. That was extremely unfortunate, and it was used as a catalyst to really go after anybody. Even though, I mean, without getting into the weeds on that, all of us are pro-union. Like knowing how that went down behind the scenes and then how it was portrayed was very challenging for me. In this election cycle, even though I was kind of away from it running for the city council, just how it was weaponized, that I was like, oh boy, this sucks. But so, the aftermath of that with certain districts and the at-large, there were some, to me it was shocking. Honestly, it was District 5. Like, that was like, what? Stephanie Musich.
Yeah. And, it's funny, I had assumed that she was going to win, and I didn't even realize there was a competitor. And I think and I live in her district, mm-hmm. and there was like one flyer about her competitor, and I can't remember the name right now.
Yeah.
But, it was all, she didn't have the type of experience I would have expected for.
She just graduated from college. And I'm not trying to be rude, but Stephanie it's like exchanging an encyclopedia on parks and the organization with a handwritten sheet of paper that you pulled out from Wikipedia. It's not even remotely the same, the exchange. And that to me is extremely unfortunate. And then to compound the loss of the institutional knowledge and just the person is that the board then flipped 5-4 toward what is now commonly referred to in the inside baseball of the city is the DSA, right?
And what do you think contributed to that? I mean, I know I was at the city convention and kind of watched how that whole endorsement mm-hmm. process played out, and I don't know how many park board candidates there were, but there were a lot. And they each got up and gave a speech. Mm-hmm. And it didn't feel like many people were paying attention to what was happening when they were talking.
And you know what happened to the park board? And I think this is awful. I have my own situation with the Ward 12 convention and caucus, which I have challenges with that whole process. But without getting, again, it's not about me, but at the city convention, they overturned, the state overturned the endorsement at the mayoral level, but they didn't overturn these park board races that were given by raising hands, and they were done after the mayor's whole team and half the delegates left, where a lot of people thought that it was convened. I mean, it was absolute chaos, and yet the state still let those park board endorsements stand. And so in the case of Commissioner Vice President Musich, she had no opponent at that time. So what they did is they just refused to endorse her, which was kind of ridiculous. They wouldn't even really take a vote, and they did a hand. They started shouting out no endorsement, no endorsement. Well, how that's just mob. That's a mob, and that's a story that never made the Star Tribune. That's not those are the devils in the details of these things that get lost. in the shadow of the mayor's race, right? And so from that moment on, I think the park board was really in jeopardy. Up until that point, I think it was like steady as she goes. You know, there were good people who'd announced, like kind of you knew what was happening. And then it was just all hell broke loose.
I'm trying to look up her name. This is terrible. I'm trying to look up the name of the person who actually.
It's Kay.
Was it Kay for Parks?
Yeah, I don't remember her last name. I certainly don't know how to pronounce it. It starts with a C.
So the convention process in general, I mean, the city convention was maybe the apex of disaster, but so many people were upset with just how the whole caucus and then the convention played out. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Are there changes needed there?
Well, I will just speak for myself. But in Ward 12, I was not given the delegate list until, like, I think it was 10 days before the convention. So the convention was the second week of May, but the caucus was the second week of April, and those lists were compiled, and then I didn't get them. And I was teaching full-time, right? And then my list that I got was like almost completely redacted of who was supporting whom. So I got contact information, but I knew there were a ton of people that were for me. I knew there were a ton of people that were for my opponent. But I couldn't differentiate. You know, you're not going to spend time making a ton of phone calls for people who've already committed their support to your opponent, right? Mm-hmm. But because I didn't know, I put equal energy into everything, and I would make calls, and it was like, oh, I'm already supporting you. Find somebody else. And then there was someone, like, I got hung up on by some people, and I actually got an earful. So why are you calling me? And I was like, and it was little ticky tack things that I'm like, was this by design? Like, did my opponent get the redacted list, or is it just me? And I don't know. Mm-hmm. I heard whispers from people saying that, but I don't know. And even if it was that way, I still feel like that was why bother going to a caucus where people say who they're going to support, right? If you're not going to ensure that data stays collected. So that was just for me. And I just found the whole process to be, I enjoyed it until I realized there was just, there's a lot of,
Well, I mean, I guess the question is, going back to the city convention, now the whole Minneapolis DFL is on probation. I don't think they can nominate or endorse any candidates next year. But to me, there was so many problems just with the caucus in general. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And so much confusion, people running out of paper, like the whole sub-caucus thing. Yeah. It just feels very antiquated. Yes. And then the whole goal here is to, eventually get the DFL endorsement, whereas a lot of the conventions still didn't end in an endorsement. Right. And so I do wonder if some other system of voting, like top 3 people get to go on the ballot in November or something, because all the organizing efforts and the money and everything involved with trying to organize these conventions that are then very spotty in terms of and to the people who volunteer and organize, it's tough on them, right? And I feel like a lot of them don't get the support they need and training and
what's interesting in the caucus process is the argument for is always like, oh, it's the people's process and it gets people involved and blah 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 blah. From my experience, there are like committee chairs and these different sub-caucus chairs that have been in the hands of certain people for years. And how is that of the people when you're, taking the one thing I've learned in this campaign is that information is power, right? voter rolls are power, email addresses are power, the right phone number for the right people is power. And so if you have a half dozen people controlling that information that comes in on caucus night, I don't know how that's of the people, because it's like here's a great example. When I was a kid, I would go out to dinner with my friends, right? And I had one friend who'd be like, "Don't worry about it, guys. You pay me, I'll pay the bill," right? And it took me a year before I caught on that everybody's just kind of like, "What do I owe? Oh, $10. Well, I'll give you a 20, and then this person's giving that." And he was actually, every time he would do this, his meal would get paid for and a little bit extra, because no one's quite paying attention that we're all just giving him money and he's saying he's taking care of the bill, because we were just a little young and naive, right? Kudos to my friend who probably made out like a bandit. But that is sort of like what it feels like is happening. It's like you're all collectively there and one person is like, "Hey, don't worry about it, guys. I'll take care of this. I'll take care of this." And meanwhile, they're distributing it back so as to profit certain entities. And I don't mean just like profit financially, but I mean profit strategically. And that's just my experience, but I did see it, and it's like, okay. And I'll always take it and say, I can run with it, but.
Well, you see, kind of like even your example, though, you saw a huge lack of trust, right? Like people feeling like they had to take pictures of the sign-in sheets and everything because records were not in any way like
I was told
secure.
Yes, and I was told, I mean, just to give clarification, like I brought my parents to that and like an old family friend thinking like, "You guys can man my table while I go around and chat with people," right? I'm a little folksy. I was told like take pictures, get pictures. I was told by multiple people, have a staffer take pictures. I learned the hard way, right? But I guess there's a part of me that wanted to believe it was still like neighborly in that rage.
Right.
Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah.
and maybe there can be people who be like, "Oh, you're naive," but there's also like, isn't that what it's meant to be?
Well,
is actually neighborly, like where you can trust that the sheet's going to be real and I don't have to take a picture and worry that in a week it's going to change.
Yeah.
Like, isn't that the whole point of this so-called large caucus process?
I mean, I will say it does accomplish the goal, kind of like meeting your neighbors and talking
which is
to them.
great. Yep. Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that there's trust in the institution itself. And the other part of it that I think is people show up, they know who they're voting for.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
there isn't a lot of like the candidate gets to talk and people are like thinking about the issues.
Right.
No,
Which is how it used to be. Yeah.
People show up, they have an agenda, they're trying to get their delegates to then the next step, which is the convention. And by the convention, I don't know, 5 people in the room out of 100 don't know who they're voting for.
Yeah,
and
it's all already gamed. Yeah,
there's
absolutely.
There's already posters and, so it's just, I don't know. We have, I guess, a few years now to work on it. I would love to see another process come out of it. But what now, thinking back on it, if you had to give advice to someone who wants to run for office, whether it's city council or something else, what advice do you think you would give them?
Well, it's really exhausting.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's an important point, and kudos to everyone who chooses to run, because it's a sacrifice.
It is.
You're with your family, your energy, the stress, and it's difficult.
It is difficult.
And it favors people who don't have to have a full-time job.
I was just going to say, it favors people who don't have to have a job, which I did, and it favors people who don't have families, like families who need them, right? I mean, I don't mean like... But I mean, like children or aging parents, it favors them because then you can just focus on that. I would do a lot of prep work differently. I don't necessarily want to say everything I've learned because I will definitely do things differently should I try to attempt this again. But there's a lot more. there's a lot more gamesmanship than I think even voters know. You know, it's like also just
You mean between the different campaign staffs or what?
in terms of presentation and yeah, and staff and just the powers that be in the city and meeting people and knowing there's just a lot more that goes into it than I had realized. And I'll put it this way. I feel like some people had their aircraft and they were like, all right, we're going to take off. We're going to fuel it up. We're going to take off. Last time, you know, maybe we'll fix the engine from the last time we flew it. I was like, all right, I have 2 propellers and I'm running and there's a good wind. And then you're like you're in flight, but it's like total,
Wait,
you know,
I
just
mean,
like
you
trying to
had-
pull it together while you watch these jets like fly past you. And you're like, yeah, I wish I built my engine first, but that would have required me to decide to even do this 2 years ago. Right.
Yeah.
And I hadn't. 2 years just feels like a lot when you're a mom and you're a teacher and you're doing your thing. And so I thought I'd given it plenty of, you know, mental prep. So
You
yeah,
had
does
to
that
have
make sense?
known a little bit what to expect. I mean, the
Yes.
park board. You ran for park board. And
I did.
won,
I did.
So,
But I will say it's a different level. You know, I mean, I'm a former big time athlete. I do all my metaphors are about athletics. It's like JJ McCarthy for the Vikings fans, right? Like he won the national championship. He was the MVP of the national championship. He's a great quarterback and he's struggling because the level is just that's the difference between I could win at the park board in sort of an aw shucks grind it out campaign of having the best ideas. I'm sorry, I'll just say it. City council just required other things that I tried to acquire, but I took a lot of advice, but I didn't land on me because it's kind of like you don't know what you don't know until you know it, you know? So people could give me advice, but it was like, I'm not quite sure what you mean yet. And then you're in it and you're like, oh, that's what you meant.
well, so you tried to reach people through a lot of different ways. You did TikTok and Facebook, and I'm sure you did mailers.
I did.
I've done that.
Yeah.
So what do you think was the most effective? I mean,
It's interesting. Each hit a different type of demographic, which was fascinating. Facebook and Instagram seemed to have a lot of reach. TikTok had reach, but with those who would like to see my downfall.
okay.
Should I put it that way?
Sure.
So it almost started to feel like I was speaking directly to them at a certain point in time, which was weird. But, you know, because everybody has their like social media niche. So then the Facebook ads, like it reached a point toward the end where when I was out in Ward 12, it was a 50-50 chance someone already knew who I was, which was crazy. You're Becka. I am. You know, like, so
Yeah.
that was crazy.
So, is there anything else you wanted to say about the election? Because I had some questions I wanted to pose on that article that you wrote.
Yeah, I mean, no, I mean, I just feel the strategic loss. I mean, just the numbers, and I wrote a different piece that I don't know if the Strib will publish it, just about like the Southeast, like Ward 12, District 5, like that was a missed opportunity, and it was very costly. But we don't have to talk about that now. I mean, it was
changed the park board.
And it changed the city. And
Yeah.
it changed the city because I still am not convinced that we have that there's a majority there, right? And maybe that's a good thing. I don't know, but I would have liked to see things be more steady. We face a lot of issues, but I'll more than happily talk about those than my.
Well, the city council right now is kind of considering amendments for this year's budget and stuff. And I think it's the first week of December that we kind of hear what they're coming out with.
So I'm done licking my wounds. I'm trying to get back into budget season.
But you did write about financial instability in the city, and I was very curious kind of what you meant about that. Like you saw there was a real risk if we don't act.
Yes.
But explain maybe a little bit more, like where is the city unstable?
Everywhere.
Well, I mean, you talked about, the businesses closing and stuff as being like a symptom.
Yes.
But are you specifically talking about property taxes not meeting expenses, or the city having to borrow money, or like problems with its bonds?
So it's all of it. Property taxes going up shows that the city has a gap, right? That's just, so we're spending more than we're taking in, and we don't have commercial corridors to take the hit. Why don't we have commercial corridors? Because downtown is largely vacant and our traditional corridors are empty. Why are they empty? Well, violence, right? Uptown, it's a huge one. Violence is a huge one. And there's no such thing as petty crime. There's crime. There's crime that is property crime. There's crime that is personal crime. And then there's, of course, like capital crimes, which affect life and death. Property crimes are reaching a point where, along with, and I know that certain groups get really mad when I talk about this, but we are pricing out businesses also based on our minimum wage. I was fighting for, and I will continue to fight for, actual jobs. Union jobs are great. Union jobs are great. The problem is when you price out small businesses, it's not by demanding a certain wage, right? What you've done is you've made them do a hiring freeze. Like, let's say if I'm going to start my own coffee shop and I couldn't afford certain staffers for my campaign, right? I'll just take it all on myself, as a lot of entrepreneurs do. That means shorter hours because you only want to work 8 to 10 hours a day. And that means like smaller staff and less of a margin, right? Margin for error. Well, if there was a lower barrier to entry in terms of cost of employment for newcomers, restaurants and businesses that have been around for a while, they can kind of take the hit because they have the machine rolling. But we have a bunch of empty storefronts after 2020, and they've never been repurposed because we've made it harder to start a business, not easier.
Well, I think more goes into that than just wages, right? Like,
right. But yeah, I'm using that as an example. Absolutely. There's insurance, there's property taxes. I mean, insurance is a massive, massive hit. And anybody who's a homeowner feels that already themselves. Even if you're not a homeowner, you just own a car, right? Where are you parking your car? If you're parking your car in the street, the insurance is going to be jacked up, especially in certain neighborhoods, right? So all of these factors are pricing out businesses and residents. And then what is happening too, that I saw at the park board over a year ago, and this was actually the body of this email that got me in trouble, but nobody wanted to look at the heart of it, is it's not just, so we set a property tax, and this DSA-led council, we're going to set a property tax levy. And they act as though like, right, here we go. The problem is it's slipping. So when the property tax levy fits with the market, you get about 99% paying it, right? You pay it, I pay it, our neighbors pay it. When it becomes where it's, you can know that this is a fiscal mismatch of the residents versus what the city is asking of them, because that's really what the budget is. The city is asking of the residents, put in this for our joint stuff, right? That's the essence of government. Well, what brought up my alarm back in last May was that our property tax, it's a very simple word and it's eluding me, recovery, right, of like people who are actually paying it. Last year was 98%. The year before that was 98%, and now it's slipping into the 97%, okay? Which is millions of dollars, millions, right? So what that shows is an instability in the budget. So it's like saying, I remember my ex-husband had a job like this once. He was at a startup. He'd had a salary. The salary was fixed, and then one day the boss came to him and said, "I can't pay you this month." and we were a young family, and I was like, WTF, right? But that's the equivalent of what the city's doing when our property taxes become unstable. And that is the biggest barometer of like something's wrong. So the idea that, and I still, I mean, a little bit, this is where I fault myself in my campaign. I mean, anybody I talked to, they were like, you have my support, right? And I guess I just didn't talk to enough people, because it blows my mind that that I or others that we didn't get this message out, that like it affects everybody, and it's not going to get any better. And we just elected a majority that doesn't seem to have any comprehension of what like the implications of property taxes.
So, I mean, the mayor puts out the original budget, right?
Mm-hmm.
They amend it. So there's the group of them looking at the finances, right?
Yep. Yeah.
But what happens now, though, I guess, is a little bit of my question. Is the problem, I mean, I get that we're not taking as much in on commercial properties, but does the city services, do they need to shrink? Do they need to hire less people, lay off people? I mean, like,
well, that's what you want to avoid.
How do you
right?
get this? If you could wave your magic wand and get things back in balance, how does the city able to do that?
Well, this is where I credit the mayor and I critique I'm just going to say DSA, Progressive Bloc, whatever. In order to retain essential services and union jobs, you need to cut back on these contracts with outside expenditures and outside nonprofits. And that has been for the last 8 years plus, probably, but certainly since 2017, that has been the MO. Oh, we're going to try new things. We're going to try different things. And I campaigned on that of like, hey, I when it came to like policing, I think I even said this in here, like at the park board, there is street reach that are not uniformed officers that meet people where they are, but they're still under the control of the park board and the superintendent's office, right? You can do the same thing at the city level, have it under the control of the public safety, right? But it's within the city's control with the city's employees. And what has happened since 2021, 2020, right, even before, is just like, oh, we'll give $1 million to this group and $1 million to that group. And those are the things that are going to have to be shut down. And I actually said this at the League of Women Voters debate against Ms. Chowdhury, because she was talking about like, oh, I'm just so proud that I got $100,000 for some little thing. And I was like, yeah, that's the first thing that gets cut in the winter. Now is the season of our discontent. Like this, that's the first thing that gets cut, are those $100,000 contracts here and there. And I kept trying to say that in Ward 12 too, about like the Cooper Playground, which is not, they got $100,000 of a $2 million playground fix. You're not there yet. And that's the first thing that gets cut in hard budget times. It's like I tried to equate it to a family. Like if it's between your mortgage and your annual trip to Disney, you're going to pay your mortgage. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's what it is.
So do you feel like there's enough transparency in our city government right now that we know where all these contracts are going?
No.
I mean, I'm like, just to take one little section of it, the neighborhood safety department. I mean, they have, I think, 40 vendors.
Yeah.
Right. And they will argue that each sort of neighborhood has its own needs, and they're trying to cater the program to that neighborhood. But kind of to your point, I question, like, well, why isn't there just one group and they're in city employees?
Yes.
And they do neighborhood safety.
Yes. I actually don't understand it either. And the reality is it's like, if you can use AI to create an app, and they're advertising it to children, like my son's age, right? And they're like, why can't the city have a dashboard where a few clicks away, you can it's all just right there, right? I mean, these are public dollars. We should be able to find them more easily. Like, honestly, like, it's like right now, even still, we talk about transparency, and it's like, oh, well, the city budget is all online. No, it's not. It's not. And I know this because I've looked it up, and I've looked up the school's budget, and in fairness, the recommended budget with parks isn't as transparent as I would like it either, because it sort of reads like a booklet instead of reading like an Excel spreadsheet. And I'm sorry, you should have a public facing somewhere. I'm not saying everybody knows how to read that, but I do. And there are people out there that would like to say, hey, what is that $5 million box?
Yeah.
Right? And if you get a government contract, you should be accountable to saying what you did with it. And that was, again, something that I campaigned on.
Well, and I'll just throw in, like, I feel like when you have all those different contracts, it's also an extra burden on the city. You have to administer them.
Yep. Yeah.
Like, so
Yep.
if you give someone $1 million and they're supposed to say, I don't know, clean up the neighborhood, someone's got to check that they actually are putting people out there, that they're removing graffiti, that they're picking up trash, all those things. So now you're almost doing dual work, because you're paying to have the work done, and then you're paying to have someone make sure the work's done. And then doing all the competitive bidding on the contracts. It's a lot. And so I guess I'm just curious, like, well, how do you rein it in? And to your point, like, if the city is on unstable ground, what happens? I mean, in a year, 2 years, like, when is there any sort of reckoning, I guess?
The reckoning happens like a slow death. I don't know if you've seen the Netflix film about President James Garfield, but it's called Death by Lightning, and I'm going to watch the last of it. Oh, it's great. Yeah. I mean, I'm a dork, but it's just a slow death. I mean, the man was shot, and it took like 6 months to die by an infection. The way you do a hard turn, where you're procedurally doing it and it's open, right? Because the mayor probably could have the power to just be like, nope, yank, right? And then that would cause a groundswell of anger, and but you could just start with an audit. In my opinion, you start with an audit of regulatory services. Why aren't we painting graffiti? Did a council member lean on regulatory services and say, don't do this in my ward? Why aren't we doing certain things that we're supposed to do, right? Or we say we're going to do. We should audit our procurement process. How do these contracts get awarded? What is the scoring metric? Who decides? Everybody wanted to make a big thing about Reverend McAfee, who now, I wish him luck, he's running for the state representative. But
he is.
But there are other contracts that were equally problematic. That it's like, okay, well, if you're critiquing a handshake deal on one side, then let's just audit the whole system. Let's just audit it, and it would take time and it would take money, but if we start by auditing these
people
systems
outside the system,
yes,
I mean, I would love to have an
independent.
Yes,
the auditor is supposed to be independent. I like Mr. Timmerman. I would like to hope that he can remain independent. I know that he gets pulled 1,000 political directions all the time, but if they budgeted some money and were very specific about, we want to start here, right? Audit everything. Audit the processes. Audit. In my opinion, you start with regulatory services. You start with CPED, and then you go from there.
And a perfect example to me is that they had that, and one of the neighborhood safety groups was billing the county and the city for the exact same services, right? And so it's like, how do you know that that's occurring if no one's auditing?
Yeah.
But we only have a couple minutes here, and I wanted to close up just asking, now that we have this new council, what's your prediction for what they'll be able to get done? In terms of maybe tightening up some of these financial
this is interesting
gaps.
because I have a big background in sports. So everything's a sports analogy now, right? But it's like, well, who's gonna step up to what, right? What personality is gonna show up, right? What version of this player do we have, right?
Because I mean, and it is funny because I'm sure you experience, I think, running for office is very different than actually
absolutely
being,
it's so different.
It's
so
like
different. Governing is very, very, very different
versus being an administrator.
This is an actual job with actual skills, and I'd like to think that I have those skills, and I'm not sure that everybody who got elected does. But some people are really good at campaigning. My opponent in particular in Ward 12 sprinted toward the middle in our campaign. And what I mean by that is like ideologically, she was still with her DSA pals, but wanted to present to voters that she and I were the same. And in fact, it was kind of funny at the League of Women Voters that she was actually more aligned with the mayor than I was. And I was like, okay. It was just kind of funny. But so, is that person going to show up at the voting block? I personally don't think so, because you have these like groups. But there are several, and I don't necessarily want to name names, but there are 2 council members that I very much have my eye on of like, which way are you going to go? And that will tell the tale of the next 4 years, really, because that's the difference. I think it's clear that neither side has a veto-proof majority anymore, right? Like a super majority. But then there are these wild cards in the middle. So
yeah, I mean, so there was just the letter that some of the counselors sent out about working together.
Yeah.
Right. So that's a good sign. But then at the same time, Womensley is looking to start a DSA caucus.
Yeah.
Right. So
yeah.
that's almost saying, he sends a message, I think, like, no, we're going to have our own group and our own ideas. And so it'll be interesting
really,
to see how it goes.
If Wansley, I think that you're going to see a lot of people who hid their DSA affiliation in the campaign unmask, because now they're locked in for 4 years and they're not going to care. And that's a real loss for Minneapolis, because I don't believe in deception. I wear my heart on my sleeve, and I think a lot of people do, just because they just are like, hey, I want to be the same person that you vote into office that you met on the campaign trail, and not everybody does that, And
it's hard to do that.
It's hard. It is hard.
Voters demand something of you.
That's why I was saying with the plane, right? Of like I'm out there with my like pretend, Donald Duck wings, and everyone's making a judgment call of like, she doesn't know how to fly.
So, last question.
Yeah.
Do you know what's next for you, or if you're still figuring it out?
I am still figuring it out. I know what I would like to do. I have a few options, but I love the city, and the main thing, I will just say, like, my son is going to graduate from high school, and I'd always said I'm going to leave and move back to New York City. But I've committed, I'll tell you at least this much, I'm committed to Minneapolis, because it's my hometown, and I like it here, and I like the people, and I don't want people priced out. So,
all right.
Yeah.
Well, great.
Yeah. Thanks, Terry. I appreciate the time.